Launchpad is Teesside University's business startup incubator. We provide support and advice to students, staff and graduates looking to start a new business venture. So, without further ado, ladies, gentlemen, students, teachers and future leaders, welcome to the Launchpad Sessions podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, on the show today we have none other than Teesside University Head of Enterprise and founder of Launchpad, Mr. Steve Dougan.
Good afternoon.
How are we doing, Steve?
I'm really well, thanks for asking.
Brilliant. So I just want to kick this off with, in your own words, what is Launchpad? If I was a first year student just turning up today and I was coming to speak to you, what is Launchpad?
Well, the first thing about Launchpad is it's a huge brick Victorian primary school that you'll see on the campus. If you're in the heart of the campus and you look across past the library, you'll see a huge old Victorian building, the oldest building on our campus, built in 1892. It used to be a primary school, but its job now is to give our students and graduates the best place possible to start a new business, start a new venture. So Launchpad is our incubator. It's our on-campus startup community and the best place possible to start a new company.
Brilliant. So what's your role within Launchpad then for the listeners?
Yeah, my role now as Head of Enterprise is to create the conditions where it's easiest to start a new student or graduate startup. So that's about creating the best space, making sure the incubator is the best possible space to start something new, start a new company, to make sure we have the right support programs, the right courses and workshops to help students understand what a new business could be, how to start a new business, and to make sure that we inspire our students with great stories about our successful alumni so they feel that it's something they can achieve, that they can do. So my job is to create all the right conditions where a graduate or student can start a new high growth potential business and potentially change their future, change their destiny. That's my team's role to create those conditions.
So a little bit more on yourself. How did you end up into this role? What were you doing beforehand that led you into such a unique position?
Yeah, well, I came to Teesside University as a supplier. So my first role here was as a consultant, helping new businesses in the then reasonably new incubator to get started. And like any consultant, you have lots of different clients. And Teesside University ended up being the client that I enjoyed spending the most time with and looked forward to spending time with. And so over time, that consultancy role went from spending 1 day a week here to spending 2 days a week here to spending 3 days a week here, and became more and more like a job than like a client. And as my circumstances changed and I had a young family, my priorities changed, and I wanted to spend more time in the Northeast, and I wanted to spend more time with a customer, with a client that I got real satisfaction from working with. And so between the university and we started to think about potentially me becoming an employee of the university rather than a supplier of services. And that's what eventually happened when I took a role as Senior Business Advisor and Professional Development Director at Digital City. And that was my first role at Teesside University. And I've been here ever since. So 15 years later, I've been through 4 different roles here at the university, and now in my role as Head of Enterprise.
So what did you do before you worked for the university then?
Yeah, well, lots of things is the answer to that. I had 2 businesses. One was a consultancy business, which the university was a customer of, and my other business was a turn-up-and-shoot photography studio in an old telephone factory, where anyone with a decent high-end DSLR camera could turn up and we used to say turn up and shoot the kids, but it was just turn up and photograph the kids in an amazing environment, and a business partner ran it and I owned it. So before coming here, I had 2 businesses on the spin, and it was great fun, really good fun to do. Prior to that, I worked for Longhurst Group at Longhurst Hall in Northumberland as a consultant, with clients like PricewaterhouseCoopers, Woolworths Group, Royal Mail, helping their management teams to navigate change, helping them to, in Royal Mail's case, get ready for privatisation. And that was an amazing role, and a great place to work in an old country house in the middle of nowhere with a cricket pitch and deer in the woods and it was idyllic, idyllic really. And prior to that, I worked in mobile communications for Vodafone and Orange PLC from Launch. So my career started in technology, drifted into consultancy, and in many ways now working with the kinds of businesses we see at the university, it's drifted back into technology again, which is really good fun.
So I'm guessing in the last 15 years you'll have come across a lot of very interesting characters.
Wow, yes. Yeah, varied and interesting characters, absolutely.
Is there any in particular that stand out in your mind?
Yeah, I think every now and again you meet people that come through an incubator, and you within a day or two of meeting them, you know they're special, and they're going to do something really special. And one of those people that sticks in my mind from recent history is Chloe Clover, who we all know as the founder of, with her partner Lou Tonner, the founder of Wonder Films. Amazing business, growing real quick now. But meeting Chloe and Lou, you knew very quickly they had that energy, that spark in their eye that told you they were going to do something exceptional. And one of the great things about my role, and I hope about my team's roles, is that you get to meet people like that. And every hour that you invest in them, you see the impact it makes because they do incredible things. And so Chloe and Lou, someone like Bruce Slater as well from Radical Forge. If anyone out there knows Bruce, you'll know that he's a exceptional individual, incredibly creative, driven, self-confident guy. And again, meeting Bruce for the first time probably 7 or 8 years ago now, actually. I've known Bruce for a long time and supported him through lots of iterations of his business, not all of which worked. Until he got to the point where he's had this huge success with Radical Forge, now 80 staff from 2 founders to 80 plus staff at Radforge. And again, Bruce is one of those people that within a few days of meeting him, there's something there that's really special.
It's interesting that you've said a couple of times within a few days of meeting these people.
Yeah.
Is there any particular traits within them that stand out?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the things you spot is they think and move with pace. So they're quick, they're quick to think and they're quick to act, and they have an energy about them as they move around, which sounds like a strange thing to say, but if you observe people who are successful, they generally have quite a high level of energy and they do things with a certain amount of pace, which that energy brings, and they're not hanging around, they're not taking their time over things, they're on a mission to succeed, and that gives them a certain speed, and they obviously have a sharp intellect and they have a keen mind, and when you sit and speak to them you can get a real feel for what's behind the eyes.
Is there any particular recommendations that you give to people when they're coming in there, they're all infused, it might be a Chloe, it might be a Bruce, that you would recommend to them when they're starting their own business that they need to take on board? What bit of advice would you give people at that early stage?
Yeah, I think the best bit of advice is you've got to really love what you're doing. You've got to be passionate about the thing that you're trying to do, otherwise get a job. Because many of our students and graduates are super talented, and out there could be an amazing job role for them with a brilliant employer where they'll get sick pay, holiday pay, a pension, professional development, a great manager, a great working environment, and that's fine. That's a really cool outcome for a graduate or a student or a member of staff here. But for those that are destined to be self-employed or build their own business, do their own thing, that world really doesn't fit them very well, because they have this burning passion to do their own thing, and nothing's going to stop them from doing that. And if that's the way you're wired, you're on the right path. But if you get a sense that they're maybe only 70% of the way there, they don't quite believe in their own product or idea, or don't quite believe in themselves and their ability to deliver on it, you've got to counsel caution, because the self-employed path is an amazing one, but it's incredibly difficult. So I think you've got to have passion. You've got to be in love with the thing that you want to do, whether that's a new product or service or a skill, that you want to monetize. And that could be voice acting, painting, it could be programming, it could be almost anything. You've got to really be passionate. So I think the best bit of advice I could give is to kind of do a bit of a self-audit, on yourself, because the path ahead is going to be a really hard one. Like all good things, the birthing of them's difficult. But if you're up for it, then absolutely go for it. But if you have some doubts and that passion and love with the thing that you're going to do isn't really there, then maybe you need to think about doing something else.
I'm guessing over that time as well then, so you've mentioned Bruce, you've mentioned Chloe going on to do great things.
Yeah.
There will have been people who you'd spoke to who didn't quite hit that level,
Yeah.
but did seem to bring the same passion and enthusiasm you talked about. What are the common pitfalls that they come up
Yeah,
against?
it's a really good question. It's a good question. Sometimes the stars don't align, even for those that do bring that energy and passion and speed and pace. Right place at the right time, it can seem a little bit flippant, but that can be a thing. Timing can be a thing. Sometimes it's just not quite the right time for that business or for that new product or service to hit the market. And that does happen, and that's a difficult thing to judge, whether or not you're doing this at the right time in your career. And there's good examples of people who have not quite got there, gone out and got a great job, and then come back in 2 or 3 years later, with a bit of experience and with some time on their side, and the timing's different, and then they make a go of it. So failure in the first instance, or even just not progressing with it in the first instance, isn't the end of the journey. Maybe it's just time to take some time out and do something else, especially if you're young enough to do that, right? If you're in your early 20s, time is on your side. So you can take 3-5 years out and go and do a job, go and have a little bit of a career doing something, and then maybe come back into it. So, yeah, it doesn't always work out first time round. And equally, sometimes it's not the timing, sometimes it is the product or service just doesn't validate, which is jargon in my world for there just aren't enough people out there willing to spend money on it. It might be in your mind the greatest invention since sliced bread, but when you put it in front of your customers, their reaction isn't always the way that you expect it to be. And so sometimes the product or service just isn't quite right. You need to be light-footed enough to change it and pivot it, again, jargon from my world, which means make a small adjustment to the idea based on feedback from real people, from customers.
Touching on the concept of validation, we do run a lot of workshops, don't we, to support the new entrepreneurs.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Which of those would you say are most important for people in them very early stages to get a grips with?
We run some amazing workshops like the Getting Started program, Microbiz Academy, the Freelance Fridays program. All these programs will help you to put your idea out there and test it. Test it first of all with my team, with Adam and Lizzie and me and Stephen, and see what our reaction is, but also then get it in front of consumers, of customers, and see whether you get the behaviour that you expect to see. Do people ask for more information? Do they sign up to a newsletter? Do they ask you for a demo? So we have a range of workshops available that will give you a chance to get your idea out in the open and test it out and see whether or not my team validate the concept as being something that's valid, that is viable, financially viable, and with customers, whether or not this thing is viable in terms of there is a need, a want, a desire to buy it from you. So yeah, we can definitely facilitate that validation with you.
In terms of facilitating validation, then, do you have any interesting examples from what you've done when you've worked with students in the past where you've said, go out and test this idea that's very different and cost effective? Because one of the biggest obstacles to people when they're looking to start a business, I need a lot of money, I need this. What ways have you done in the past to basically showcase to validate an idea without spending a lot?
I can give a couple of really strong examples of validation experiments that didn't work. Where the idea didn't validate, and they're perhaps the most powerful, because in that instance they prevented that founder, that entrepreneur, from spending too much time and money pursuing something that didn't really have a future ahead of it. The first great example is Smoothie Cloud. So Smoothie Cloud was on paper a brilliant concept. And the concept was that in a train station or an airport where you have transient passengers moving between places quickly, the only choice of drink was either Coke or coffee. And I think that's pretty much still the case now. You see a vending machine, it's probably going to sell you a fizzy drink or sell you a cup of tea or coffee. Neither of which is, that healthy, right? So Bjorn's idea was, can we put the smoothie, the healthy drink option, into a vending machine and vend a fresh smoothie to that customer in the airport, in the train station, in the bus station, in an office, in a shopping mall. And on paper and on a pitch deck, this idea looked knockout amazing. And Bjorn could pitch it beautifully, right, Stephen? I mean, if you listen to him pitch that now, you'd be thinking this idea is an absolute barnstormer. And he'd gone as far, actually, because he had the technical skill and he had the resources. He'd gone as far as to really prototype this thing out on paper and contact a manufacturer in the Czech Republic that could make a prototype machine for €40,000, which would mash up the fruit and deliver it and sprinkle protein powder in, and it was an amazing thing. But to validate that, what Bjorn needed to do was to put the basic proposition in front of some real customers. Will they be interested in a fresh smoothie from a vending machine, not from a human being at a counter, which is the normal way of buying a smoothie? So what we helped Bjorn do is to build a mock-up smoothie cloud vending machine from card. I'm not talking cardboard boxes. It was really nice white laminated card, and we even put an iPad mounted inside this thing with a mocked up user interface that was very like the one that he would have put in the live machine, right? So if you just glanced at it, it looked like a real vending machine. Coin slot and everything. Branding, everything. And we put this in a train station platform context. We put it into a shopping mall context. And bizarrely, Bjorn hid inside the machine. And what Bjorn was testing was three things. How many people, when walking past the machine, stop and look? There's the first bit of customer engagement. Does the machine work? Does the branding work? Does the screen work to attract people, right? And then the second thing was, of those people that stop and look, what percentage approach the machine, walk up to the machine out of interest to find out more? And then of that group of people, what percentage would interact with the user interface, start pressing the buttons to find out what flavours were available? And you can kind of imagine this as a funnel with, at the wide end of the funnel, potentially hundreds of people stopping and looking, right down to maybe 15, 20 people who approach the machine, and then maybe 5 people who go on to touch the screen. You can see how it narrows down. And then the last bit was Bjorn, in a comical fashion, would jump out from behind the machine, scare the bejeebers out of the customer, right?
Sounds a bit
a bit like, one of these shows you used to watch on TV, Beatles About or something, for those that are old enough to remember that. Gosh, going back a while. And he would ask the question straight out for that customer that had pressed the screen: if this machine was vending fresh smoothies, would you pay £2.50 for a fresh smoothie? And what Bjorn had to work out was, do the numbers add up? Given how many people would walk past the machine, do enough stop? Do enough people approach the machine? Do enough people press the screen? And then do enough people say, yeah, I'd pay £2.50? Now, for Bjorn, at all locations, this concept invalidated itself very quickly across all criteria. Not enough people took notice of the machine because it looked very different from a Coke machine or a coffee machine. Not enough people approached it. Not enough people pressed the screen. And disappointingly, the most invalid bit of the concept was very few people would go as far as to pay £2.50 to get a fruit drink. There was a price barrier there somewhere around the kind of £2 mark. Coffee, people will pay anything for coffee. Stupidly, they'll pay £5 for a cup of coffee. But when it comes to fruit drinks, there was definitely an upper tier where you couldn't go. Now, for Bjorn, his whole concept needed numbers, and it needed people to pay £2.50. And on both of those metrics, it bombed out. And sensibly, Bjorn then walked away from that concept. He now has an amazing career working in China, all across Southeast Asia, for a big German engineering company. He's having a great life. But had he pursued the concept, he would have spent €40,000 on a machine that would have gone on to prove exactly the same thing,
Yeah.
just more expensively. So Beyond's Smoothie Cloud is a great example of the value of validating something, and letting it not work, but letting it not work in a really cheap and quick way.
Yeah, I'm very interested in this. So is there any other examples? Because we do get a lot of students. We've got, what, 20,000 students on campus, and people come in all the time with this idea, that idea. And I suppose it's our job to prevent them spending as much time and money, £40,000 on a machine.
Yes.
So how else do we... Any other interesting examples?
Yeah, there are some really simple examples that aren't as complex as Beyond's. You know, a good example would be Street Sniper. So Street Sniper was an app concept whereby if you were new to a city, let's say you were a student coming to Newcastle University or Durham University or wherever, and you wouldn't necessarily know when you arrived where all the cool shops were, right? The little independent retro trainer shops and skateboard shops and so on. But a local would know that kind of inside information. So what Street Sniper did is it gave you a map of the city and said, here are the coolest independent retail stores in this city that you need to know about. And then what it did is it would deliver a voucher that said 15% off at Sam's Trainer Emporium, but you've got to get there within the next hour and a half to claim it. And then it would give you a map and directions showing you how to get to the trainer shop. And if you were to follow the map, you'd get there, you'd show Sam the voucher, he'd give you some discount, and he would know that you only got to his store because Street Sniper showed you how to get there. You know, given that the search engines are dominated by the big brands and the high street generally is dominated by big brands as you look around, and the independents are generally tucked away. So to validate that, without building the app, without spending any money on coding or anything else, we just spent the whole day in Newcastle city centre asking people about what their big challenges were when shopping for products in the city centre. And what we were looking for was the problem of not knowing where the coolest places to shop were, because that's what this product would solve. But we just didn't find that problem. There just wasn't enough people, when asked, that had that issue. Yeah. They either were happy with just shopping around the main high street brands, and they didn't perceive themselves that they had a problem finding indie stores. And so in that instance, we were trying to sell something that sounds cool when you pitch it, but there just wasn't enough people in our target segment of 18 to 25-year-olds who felt the same way. And we must have interviewed, I don't know, 150, 200 people on the busiest shopping day, you know, on a Saturday in Newcastle. Yeah. Now that's a really cost-effective way of doing it, right? You're just surveying.
Yeah.
You're literally having the confidence to doorstep people and just ask them a few questions, and then track the data as you capture it. You know, and then
take a time investment rather than a financial
It's a time investment. It needs a bit of confidence because you're just approaching strangers, but generally people are really nice.
And if you're starting a business, you probably need to have that willingness
Absolutely
to engage
right.
with people anyway.
You know, so that was a really cheap, cost-effective way of invalidating that concept, and it wouldn't have worked out because the problem just wasn't there. But there are many other ways, Stephen, right? Because you're blessed with technology. This generation of founders, you can create SurveyMonkey surveys online, send out surveys to people via email and collect the data. You can create Facebook pages. You can create Instagram accounts and put products out there in front of people and see whether they click on them, like them, comment on them. So there are physical ways of doing it. There are technology ways of doing it. There is a whole plethora of ways for you to test ideas that just weren't available, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, so we've just touched on like the sampling that you did in Newcastle.
Yeah.
I want to move it back onto Teesside now. So obviously the businesses that have started in Launchpad, I think we had evidence that showed they create over £27 million in the local economy. They employ over 500 people. What makes Teesside a bit different? What makes Teesside a special place to start a business?
Well, Teesside is a special place to start a business. Teesside, Middlesbrough ranks as the third best place in the UK to start a new business. Now, there's a statistic for you, right, that you maybe didn't expect.
Yeah.
Teesside is special because I think the people here have something real obvious, and that's grit. What you see in Teesside is tenacity. and an energy and passion to change things and make things better, and this burning optimism that you find here that anything is doable in our region, anything's possible. I don't think that was always here, but I think over the last 10 or 15 years, we've seen such enormous positive change in our region, in the university campus itself, in the town, in the economy. I think there's a real optimism, which if you spend time in the business community is infectious. If you go to any of the big business awards in Tees Valley, there is an attitude that the future is going to be getting better and better and brighter and brighter. And I think you see that in people in this region, that they are, they're eternally optimistic and they're tenacious in their will to change things and make things better.
Locally then, what do you see as the big opportunities? Where are the next gaps in the market horizon?
Net zero is the biggest. That's the biggest opportunity in Tees Valley, by a country mile, because this region will be one of the centres across Europe for net zero technologies, and in the UK this will be Net Zero Central. The Net Zero Innovation Centre, the university, a core building, is a great example of that, and is happening because Tees Valley in Middlesbrough in particular is incredibly well endowed to be right at the forefront as we try to move towards a zero emissions future. So from carbon capture and storage to green energy and wind farm solutions, solar solutions, there's so much happening in our region to do with getting towards that target of being a net zero nation. I think that for me is the sweet spot in Tees Valley.
Yeah. Is there any particular areas in that supply chain where you can see somebody coming up? Obviously, there's GE, there's all these big companies in there, but they say in the gold rush, it wasn't the people that get the gold; it was the people selling the shovels.
Yeah, there's
where would
huge
a young person
huge digital opportunities, across that piece, because yes, the big technology players will come here for lots of reasons. The Freeport being one of them. A huge amount of government support for Tees Valley, flowing in through Ben Houchin and his team at Tees Valley Combined Authority. So yes, the big players will come and they'll build factories here and they'll make products here, and that will create jobs. Fantastic. But for the digital cluster here, which has always been about digital creative, so it's always been about websites, video games, animation, movie production, I think you'll start to see opportunities that are new emerging: artificial intelligence, big data, data visualization, virtual reality, augmented reality, because these technologies are needed by that zero carbon economy in order for those companies to work. So if you're GE and you're making wind turbines, you might very well need to collect data from those wind turbines and then do something interesting with that data. So if you were to visit our campus in the next 5 to 10 years, one of the things you'll see here is a brand new digital life building, within which will be a data observatory, right, where you can literally, like watching the stars, you can watch data, thousands and thousands of lines of code, and that data can be visualized in really interesting ways that give people new insights. So I think the digital industry here will benefit enormously from this new net zero hub that will grow in the region.
Brilliant. And is there anything else that you want to add whilst you're on the podcast today?
Yeah, I think if you're listening and you're a Teesside University student, I think my message to you would be there has never been a better time to be an enterprising student, to try and start something new, because you've never had this number of tools, never had these digital tools. You've never had so much support from the enterprise team and the university, and you'll never see as much support regionally as you get here in Tees Valley. You are uniquely endowed to try and start something whilst you study. Yeah. All the support's there. And also, in the future, the jobs market will no doubt look even more mixed than it does now, in terms of you have a career and then you also perhaps have multiple side hustles that bring in income. And I would recommend that to any young person, because the future, the only thing we can guarantee about the future is how uncertain it will be. And this uncertainty we see now in the jobs market will increase, and the way we think about a job will certainly change to being lots of different ways in which we make income. Not necessarily a job with an employer for life, which I think is gone now, in most industries, right? So if you're a student, why not, get involved, try something new, and even if you don't bring that business to life, you're going to learn stuff in the process that an employer is going to love in an interview. Yeah. When they ask you what you did at university, you need to not just say you got a degree and that was it. You need to have a much fuller, more holistic answer. Yeah. And employers are definitely looking for that. If you're a Teesside University graduate listening to this and you've left our university, you can come back in to the enterprise team at any point in time. You could have been graduated 10 years, had a rich career, but decide to maybe do your own thing. Again, get in touch, because the same support is here for you as if you had just graduated. So if you're a Teesside grad, again, there's never been a better time to start a new business in this part of the world, so get in touch. Find out what we can do to support you and give it a go.
An absolutely fantastic call to action there for our students and graduates, and I think that's a great way to end today's Launchpad session.
Thanks,
Thank
Stephen.
you very much.
You're welcome, thank you.
Thank you, Steve.